In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can take your bare bones AKM and turn it into this. So first of all, let's talk about what makes a firearm an AKM pattern firearm. So your Palmetto State GF3, GF5, Wasser 10s, you name it, there's a bunch of them. It's probably the most prolific pattern of AK pattern firearms or Kalashnikov pattern firearms that you're going to see out there on the market. So starting at the receiver, an AKM has a 1mm stamped receiver. You can see this rivet pattern here for the front and rear trunnion. The rear trunnion is a standard AKM rear trunnion with the tang that sticks out. Got your rear sight block and leaf there. Retainer, AKM retainer length right there. So that's your lower handguard retainer. It's got a 45-degree gas block, and then of course your front sight. This particular variant is an Egyptian Modi. Egyptian Modis are made off of Russian AKM machinery, and this is pretty much as close as you can get to an AKM without it being a Russian AKM. I'm going to take you through step by step and show you how I can take this firearm here and turn it into the ultimate AKM without making any modifications to the firearm. So let's dive in. This video is brought to you in part by JMAC Customs, who have supplied most of, if not all of the parts being installed on this firearm. And full disclosure, I work for JMAC Customs and I help design some of the parts that I'm going to be installing onto this firearm. So there is that relationship there. So let's dive in. All right, so we're going to start at the rear and kind of work our way forward. Factory AKM stock, it works. It's pretty good. It's a fixed stock, so you can't adjust it for your length of pull, so you kind of get what you get. You don't throw a fit. It's got a lower cheek weld that's going to allow you to utilize the factory iron sights, which works fine if you're running the factory irons or if you have a really low mounted optic. If you're running a taller optic, you're going to have to figure out a way to kind of make that work. And usually the way you make that work is by adding some sort of adjustable cheek riser on whatever stock you're going to be using. And for this rifle, I'm going to be installing a Magpul CTR stock. And to attach that, I'm going to be using the JMAC Customs ST6 and the FM SM1913 folding mech. So let's go ahead and throw those together. If you take a look at the FM SM1913 folding mech, you're going to see that there are two holes in there, and oftentimes the stocks will have one or two holes as well. These are for height adjustment, so you can use those different hole combinations to get the perfect height that you want in between these two devices. You only need to use one screw and one hole. The FM SM1913 folding mech can also be flipped to either side, so you can get it to fold to the right or to the left side of the receiver just by flipping the folding mech itself. For all the screws that I'm going to be installing today, I'd recommend that you install these with medium strength thread locker. This one is torqued to 11 foot-pounds. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to be applying any thread locker. All right, just pop my CTR stock on there. And we are good to go. These CTR stocks are a really nice, tight fit on these ST6 skeletonized tubes, and they work really well together. So let's figure out how we're going to get this attached to that. All right, so this product was recently released. This is the RSA AKM NTR. That NTR stands for No Tang Removal. So this device allows you to attach 1913 stock embrace options to your AKM pattern rifles with that AKM rear tang. Previously, you had to cut this tang off in order to install a 1913 rail. Now, no modification required. So let's go ahead and get this installed. All right, so the NTR replaces your factory T-nut. So you're going to remove that. You won't need that factory T-nut anymore, or the grip nut. You will instead be using the supplied T-nut that's going to attach the NTR to your receiver. All right, to do that, we're just going to go ahead and drop this into the receiver, and that is going to go through the cutout for your pistol grip, just like so. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and install the NTR, and then finally this nut in the back here. The main bolt for the NTR uses a 3/16 inch hex wrench, and you can apply up to 11 foot-pounds of torque on that particular bolt there. Now we have a secondary bolt. It's a flathead similar to the factory bolt that's going to come on your AK, and that's going to go right here in the top of the trunnion. Depending on who manufactured your Kalashnikov pattern rifle and how accurate it is to the AKM spec, this hole may or may not line up. I'd say the vast majority of these will line up, but there have been some that do not line up. If that's the case, it's not a huge deal. It's an issue with the trunnion, not the part. And the NTR installs just fine with the T-nut by itself. This is just a little bit of extra precaution there. I'm just going to snug that up. Again, you're going to want to put a little bit of Loctite or some medium strength thread locker, and that'll be good to go. So there is the NTR installed. All right, you can see the grip nuts there from the T-nut from the NTR, so that'll make it easy when it's time to install the grip. All right, so let's get our stock installed. All right, so this uses a 5/32 Allen, and I can actually go ahead and fold this. Now, when you install this, you can install it at whatever height you prefer. I'm going to install this all the way to the top there, and the max torque on this is going to be 20 to 25 inch-pounds. Go ahead, snug that up, and we're good to go. Our stock is installed. So in the fully collapsed configuration, you're looking at just a hair under what the factory AKM stock is. So with this, you're going to have the additional option to extend that length of pole a little bit more if that factory length wasn't quite enough for you. And of course, it folds. If you wanted to go shorter than this, your other option would be to remove your tang and install the RSA AKM. Again, that requires modification, but that will remove this length portion right there. But as far as no modification required, NTR installed, we have our M4 style stock, and we're good to go. Let's get to the grip. All right, taking a look at the factory AKM grip here. It's a little thin for some. Doesn't fill the hand very well, and it does work, but it leaves some room for improvement. So what we're going to be installing is the JMAC Customs SPG AK, skeletonized pistol grip for the AK. And you can see it's got ergonomic pattern to the rear that's going to help fill your hand and support the weight of the rifle. It's going to feel a lot better. You're going to be able to have a lot better grip and control over that firearm with the SPG AK. Now, the screw for the grip is metric. It's not standard because it's using the same pattern from the AK T-nut. So this uses a 5mm bit, and installation on this pretty straightforward. The grip nut is going to stay put because it's held in place by the NTR's T-nut. All right. And there we have the the grip. So we're good there. Now we're going to continue on forward to the handguard. So the factory AK handguard and gas tube upper handguard, very prolific look and design. This is very recognizable anywhere you look. Looks really cool. However, doesn't give you a whole lot of space as far as hand placement is. And depending on your body type, this may not be comfortable or ideal for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the area that we have for number one, hand placement, and also to mount accessories and to keep the barrel, the heat off the barrel and keep the barrel off of barricades if we're shooting using barricades. And we want to add a railed gas tube on it as well. So let's take a look what we have. All right, so we have the JMAC Customs MMS Modular Mounting System. This is the 10.64 inch version with the sling loop cutout. So again, no modification required. This is going to go right around the existing sling loop on your rifle. Now to install this, there's a couple things that is included. That's going to be your lower mount, your upper mount, screws for the railed gas tube, and of course the AKM length rear gas tube. All right, it's going to be a lot easier for me to film this while sitting, so we're going to get a little bit intimate here. Not really, but sort of. Depends what you're into. All right, so first up, let me get my lower mount here. And you're going to notice it comes with some Loctite 243. So again, that Loctite is going to be recommended on all these screws. I'm just not going to do it for this particular video, but when you install it, make sure you use thread locker. All right, and in the upper mount, you're going to have an Allen key, and this Allen key is going to be the same for the bolts on the upper mount to lower mount, as well as the 4 screws that are going to mount the actual handguard itself to the lower mount. So we're going to start off by installing these screws, but we're just going to kind of put them in place. We're not going to tighten them up. We're going to leave them fairly loose because we're going to want a little bit of wiggle room. We are going to snug these up, torque them up at the end once installation is about complete. We want to make sure everything's in the right spot, nothing's bumping into anything. With AKs, as you may or may not know, there's a slight variance in tolerances. Something might be a little bit off here and there. That's just kind of the way it goes with AKs. So we designed the handguard to work for a wide variation of builds and different pattern Kalashnikov rifles. These MMSs, they work with stamped and milled receivers, so they don't index against the receiver itself. It's just going to be clamping around the barrel. All right, so I got that kind of assembled there. Again, it's loose, it's moving around. That's what we want for now. Now what I'm going to do is, if you want to install the railed gas tube, I'd recommend attaching the upper mount to it right now. That's going to help us align everything a little bit later on. If you don't want a railed gas tube, you could install this upper mount by itself and run your factory gas tube over top of the MMS. But this is an ultimate AKM build, and we want the whole shebang. So if you take a look at your upper mount, you're going to notice a notch on one side. That notch is going to go towards the receiver. So make sure it's going towards the receiver. And then the screws to attach the gas tube to the upper mount are going to be in this Ziploc bag here with the Allen key. There's 4 screws, and here they are. And again, we're not going to torque these all the way. I'm just going to snug them up in place until everything is close to being assembled. Now, when I install these, I want to make sure that I'm not putting a ton of pressure on one side or the other. I want to make sure that the flat surfaces between these two are mating. So if you take a look there, the flat surfaces in between the two right against each other. I want to make sure that's how it is. I don't want it pulling to one side or the other. It really shouldn't either way, but just something to make sure of. All right, it's in place, not super tight, just kind of like, you know, they're not moving. They're hand snug. Okay, so next up on the agenda here, number one, we want to make sure our gas tube lever is open. All right, so bring it up. We want to make sure this handguard, lower handguard retainer is loose. So when I slide this over, it can move to where it needs to be. All right, once you have it where it needs to go, then you can lock it into place, and that is all set there. Next up, we're gonna get this gas tube in place. All right, you might have to kind of work it around that front there, and then it should drop right into the rear. And then those two, that's gonna go right into the recess in that MMS lower handguard there. Now my two bolts for the upper and lower mount. Again, I'm gonna just kind of get these equally in, snug it up, make sure everything is looking good. All right, and you want to be very cautious that you do not cross thread these. All right, so you want to start both of them off, make sure they're moving freely. All right, that's an issue we see some customers have. They try to jam that in there, they cross thread it, and it's an issue. All right, so make sure those aren't cross threaded. Okay, so now it's just a matter of aligning your railed gas tube with your rifle. Now, it can be tricky because depending on your build, your gas block, your front sight post, even your rear sight block could be canted. They could be by themselves a little bit crooked. And if that's the case, we're just gonna have to work around it. But visually, I wanna try to make sure that the top of this railed gas tube is flat in relation to my front and rear sight. Okay? Another thing I wanna check is inside, it's gonna be impossible to see on the camera. Inside, in between the upper and lower mount, there's a gap. I want that gap to be fairly even with some adjustment to one side or the other, just to make sure that that railed gas tube is flat. So I'm just gonna kind of snug it up, get it close to where it needs to be until it stops just freely moving. And then I'm gonna see where I'm at as far as that railed gas tube is. So I can already tell it's a little bit off to one side. So it needs to come to the left. So if it needs to come to the left, I'm gonna loosen up the screw on the right, tighten up the screw on the left. And functionally, how straight or flat you have it is not going to matter a whole lot, because you can zero, if you have an optic mounted to it, you can zero that so it works. So it's up to you on how much time you want to spend aligning it. Same goes for the lower mount. I try to get that as aligned to the receiver as possible, and the way I do it is I feel with my fingers on both sides, and I can feel if it's kind of pulling to one side or the other. And you want to also make sure that that lower mount stays all the way to the rear or the front of the receiver. You don't want a gap. All right, I can feel with my fingers that that's aligned pretty good. All right, I am going to tighten these up just a little bit more, the 4 screws for the lower MMS. And I'm gonna flip down my rear sight block or my my gas tube lever. All right, so that's in place where it should be. And the last thing to do is torque it up. So the 4 bolts for the gas tube, they use this 7/64 inch hex wrench, and you will apply 10 to 15 inch pounds of torque using that Loctite 243 or similar. All right, again, I'm not using Loctite for this video, and I'm just going to hand tighten them. To achieve the proper torque settings, I recommend using a fat wrench. They're fairly inexpensive, and they are good to have around if you are working on firearms and need things torqued correctly. I have installed these MMSs a countless amount of times, so I have a pretty good idea on where the torque needs to be using these supplied Allen keys. Definitely recommend using an actual torque wrench. Now, the 4 screws for the MMS handguard and the 2 screws in between the mounts, they both use a 9/64 hex wrench, and they have a max torque value of 20 to 25 inch-pounds. We have ran these on a ton of different firearms. Oh, real quick. Caution when your final torques, because it will cause that lower mount to slightly shift. That's what this just did. So I'm just going to kind of back off a little bit, tighten up the other side. We run these on a bunch of different firearms, and these do not walk off if they are installed correctly. This will not slide on your barrel. It's going to be good to go. Full auto, full semi-auto, no issues. All right. And there you have it. The MMS is installed, a 10.64 inch version. You could go longer than this. You can go 11.8 or even 14.25, but both of those models currently require the removal of your sling loop. And we are not modifying this rifle. We are just giving it the ultimate upgrade with no modification. Now, once your MMS is installed, you'll notice there is a gap at the rear. That's supposed to be there, okay? The MMS does not make contact with your gas block or your rear sight block. It only contacts the barrel back here at the mount. This means it's going to be more accurate and there's going to be less heat transfer than some other options that are going to be available. All right, so now that we have this installed, let's add some accessories to it. So one of my favorite combos is the SFG and the HRD. And if you have the space, this is a great combo. And that's what we're going to be throwing on this right now. And where you mount your handguard accessories is going to be personal preference. So where I'm mounting these may not be the ideal position for you. And the SFG does use 2 different size screws, so no, you're not tripping. All right. And then the HRD hand retention device. This might be my favorite handguard accessory because it works on almost anything, any length handguard. So there you have it. All right. And this can be used several different ways. I like to run this as more of sort of a hand stop, and this is kind of like a finger rest. You can also use that as more of a vertical grip if you wanted. The skeletonized nature of this allows you to run fingers through if you want to grip in an alternate area. There's just a lot of options with this combination. If you're running against a barricade, you can use that as a standoff and your handle's still clear. So again, tons of different options with that combination there. All right, and then muzzle device. This wouldn't be the ultimate AK if it wasn't for the ultimate muzzle device, which is the OG JMac Customs RRD 4C. All right, this one's just the standard muzzle device. It's not a suppressor mount. You could run the suppressor version of this, or the 2C or the 360. Tons of different options, but for just a direct attach using the detent notch, the RRD 4C is the best performing muzzle device that JMac makes. One of the first and still the best. This is the normal size version. There's also a slim version if you want to run that instead. If you're looking for something a little bit tamer, or you're maybe shooting indoors, you can run something like the FRD, the flash reduction device. That'll go right on there, and again, use the detent notches as well. So a lot of options, but the RRD4C, you really can't go wrong. And I would recommend this or some sort of brake on a 7.62 by 39. It really makes the firearm much, it requires a lot less effort to fire it effectively and quickly. All right, so we're looking pretty good so far, but iron sights are great. You should know how to run iron sights. But in this day and age, we have technology. We have electronic sights. So we need to put a red dot on this thing to make this the ultimate AKM firearm. So we have some options here. This particular rifle does not have a side optic mount, so we're not mounting anything on the side of that. But we do have this railed gas tube on the MMS. This will hold 0. It'll hold 0 for optics, lasers. So you can mount an optic directly to your MMS gas tube rail. Something like this. This is a Hollow Sun 503C. Something like this or similar works awesome. Even like a micro red dot, such as a Hollow Sun 507, something like that. Those work awesome. What I'm going to be installing today is going to be a T1 pattern red dot Hollow Sun 503GU on the JMac Customs T1 footprint MMS optics mount. Now you'll notice this one is silver. It's in the raw finish because these are not yet available. This is going to be available very soon. And the reason I'm including it in this video is because if you're watching this in the future, this will most likely already be out. And this is going to mount directly to our MMS lower handguard there. So this is going to be a great addition to that MMS system. To install this, very simple. We're going to have to go ahead and flip our rear sight leaf out of the way and flip up our gas tube lever. Then this is going to slide in. These are going to correspond with these holes here. And you'll kind of feel it kind of set in to place. And then we're going to go ahead and start these screws. Again, if you're installing this in the future, you're going to want to use medium strength thread locker. Just getting these started here. There should not be any resistance. They should be going nice and easy. We're just starting these out. All right, and I am just kind of tightening them finger tight right now. Making sure everything is even in place and all that is good. All right, looks pretty good there. Now you're going to want to go ahead and apply the final acquired torque. All right, again, I'd recommend using a torque wrench, like a fat wrench, to get that those final torque values in there. All right, now we can go ahead and flip our rear sight back, close our gas tube lever, And boom, there we go. Again, that's going to be black, black anodized, because that is aluminum. So that's going to look real nice. Now, it's kind of hard to picture what this thing looks like when it's kind of all taken apart. So I'm going to go ahead, put everything back together, and let's take a final look at it. And there you have it. With a little bit of internet magic, everything is put back together and assembled and ready to go. Looks good, feels good, and most importantly, this thing shoots good. All right, so if you have a bare bones AKM and you're wondering what to do with it, how can you make it more practical, how can you bring it in to 2023, then I'd highly recommend you take a look at some of the products I talked about in today's video. There's going to be a link down in the description below that's going to take you to a blog post over on the JMac Customs website where all of the products will be listed. There will be links to all of those, and you'll be able to take a look at them yourself, compare, and see what you like. There's going to be a variation of colors available from tan, green, black, so go with what you like. The colors are irrelevant, that's just personal preference. If you're running a taller optic, you can run a cheek riser on your stock. You can run alternate stock options such as the JMac Customs triangle stocks, the skeleton stocks. I'm a big fan of the ST6s on with the M4 stocks as well. They're all a great option, and a lot of it is just based off your personal preference and what your individual needs are. So let me know what you think about this setup down in the comments below, and thank you for watching.